Okay. So I'm going to welcome everyone again to our Green Living Seminar presentation. I'm Elena Traister, Professor of Environmental Studies here in the Environmental Studies Department at MCLA. This semester's Green Living Seminar is organized around the theme, Greening the City. All of these presentations are free and open to the public. They take place on Wednesdays at 5:30 here in room 121 in the Center for Science and Innovation at MCLA. You can find the schedule and links to recordings of prior presentations at www.mcla.edu/greenliving, one word. Today's presentation is going to last about 40-45 minutes and will be followed by a question and answer session. And before I introduce our presenter, I'm going to make a quick announcement for next week's presentation. On Wednesday, March 2nd, David Sayer with Beyond Plastics and Sustainable Saratoga will be presenting a lecture titled Community Strategies for Addressing the Plastic Pollution Crisis. Today's presentation on strategies for improving sustainability of cities and towns, school food, will be given by Amie Hamlin, Executive Director of the Coalition for Healthy School Food. Amie has served as the Executive Director of the Coalition for Healthy School Food since its founding in 2004. Previously, she was the director of 3 other nonprofits, 2 nonprofit environmental organizations, and a tobacco control program to ban smoking in public places. CHSF was co-founded by Amie after she wrote a New York State legislative resolution for healthy plant-based entrees and nutrition education in schools, which passed unanimously in 2004. She has a master's degree in education and is certified in plant-based nutrition through E-Cornell. She is mom to a college student. In her spare time, Amie operates Growing Peace Farm, a small veganic farm outside of Ithaca, New York. The Coalition for Healthy School Food is a 501c3 nonprofit that introduces plant-based foods and nutrition education in schools to educate the whole school community about the health, environmental, and social justice issues of our food choices. We're really glad you made the trip over. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. I am really glad to be here. It's my second time out away, for a work trip. So it's just really great to get out and come visit you here in North Adams. I feel really fortunate to be able to do work that is so important to me, and I love sharing it with others. So I'm going to show you what healthy school looks like, why it matters, and outline how, and by extension, how you can bring these plant-based meal options to your school districts, if you're interested in doing that. My goal for you tonight is that you leave with an understanding of the integral role that school food and school food policy can play in mitigating climate change and many diet-related health conditions. The potential benefit for both public health and climate change is enormous. I hope you'll come away with a new understanding of the issue and desire to do something to help create change. I'll be mentioning 6 amazing community-based projects, learning project possibilities for you who are enrolled in the course and for anyone else who would like to help create this change. And then at the end, I'll take questions. Okay, gotta figure out how to use this now. So let's look at the what. What is healthy school food? This is what healthy, climate-friendly school food can look like. On the left is a bean tostada, and on the top right is West African beans and greens, and on the bottom, Happy Burgers. I want to point out that we've been doing this for a long time, since 2004. So some of the pictures of our delicious recipes were taken on styrofoam trays before compostable trays were widely used in schools. On this slide, we have North African red lentils on the left, Fiesta Mexican lasagna on the top right, and Tuscan tomato pie on the bottom right. Are you hungry yet? Many of our recipes have been developed for us by the famous Moosewood restaurant in Ithaca, New York, where I live. So, do you notice anything about those school meals that I showed? Anything else? Yes? Yes, they are all vegan. These school meals are completely plant-based, and that's because healthy plant-based vegan recipes will accomplish the most to address climate change and public health, which also includes equity issues. Has anyone here heard of Vegan Fridays in New York City yet? The images on this slide are from New York City schools earlier this month. They are some of the inaugural Vegan Friday meals. I'm really proud that the Coalition for Healthy School Food played a key role in laying the groundwork for Vegan Fridays. I'll tell you more about how we did that in a bit, but just to let you know, all 1,700 schools have vegan food on Fridays. There was some complaints, and as a result, they decided to also let kids have a cheese sandwich if they didn't want the vegan option. But essentially, most of the kids are eating vegan on Fridays, other than the milk, which is optional, but must be offered. So why is school food an important topic to be discussing at a Green Living seminar? Let's get into it. Historically, the reduction of animal products has not been the primary messaging of environmental organizations, but that's beginning to change. And schools are a great place to address the reduction of animal products because there are over 7 billion school meals served per year in the United States. And animal agriculture is one of the top contributors to climate change. It's true that there has been debate over the exact percentage of greenhouse gas emissions caused by the livestock sector. Estimates range from 14.5 to 51%. But even at the lowest estimate, animal agriculture is still one of the top contributors to climate change, globally, even more than transportation. So compared to plant food production, livestock production causes more pollution, resource usage, and greenhouse gases. Research published in the journal Nature in 2018 stated that greenhouse gas emissions cannot be sufficiently mitigated without worldwide dietary changes towards a more plant-based diet. And the researchers found that a global shift to a more plant-based diet is needed to keep the climate change even under 2 degrees centigrade, when the goal is supposed to be 1.5. This means people in this country need to reduce intake of all animal products, specifically eat 90% less beef and 60% less dairy products than is currently being consumed. And this doesn't mean switch the kind of meat, it means reduce all kinds, while increasing beans and lentils between 4 and 6 times. Here's a chart showing the results of another analysis from 2014 published in the journal Climatic Change. They calculated the pounds of carbon emissions based on different types of diets, and they found an entirely plant-based diet results in the least amount of carbon emissions. Can everybody see that okay? The slides are showing up good? Okay. This University of Michigan study found that over 80% of diet emissions come from animal products. And this is my favorite chart that really shows the dramatic difference between diet styles. It shows the greenhouse gas impact of different types of diets per person per year represented in car miles. It compares a vegan, vegetarian, and omnivorous diet, and within each category, organic versus non-organic. The difference is really striking. This is from a German study, so I converted the kilometers into car miles. So I do want to point out, because a lot of environmentalists will say, well, I eat organic dairy and I eat organic meat. So you can see the organic omnivorous diet and then versus the vegan one at the top. It's quite a big difference still. So let's take this student's advice. Don't raise more animals, raise more plants. So we've talked about some of the environmental reasons why we should improve school food. Another reason is to save money. This slide shows the findings of a study that Friends of the Earth did in Oakland, California schools. So they switched to more plant-based main dishes and achieved considerable climate benefits, all while saving $42,000 over 2 years. So the reason why this matters is to save the environment and to save money. And that money, by the way, that pays for school food is our tax dollars. So to achieve these same environmental savings through technology would have costed millions of dollars. So for those listening to the podcast, over a 2-year period, they saved 42 million gallons of water, or the equivalent of 63 Olympic-sized pools. They achieved a 14% reduction in the carbon footprint of their food purchases, which is like the equivalent of planting 15,000 trees or driving 1.5 million fewer miles or installing 87 solar systems on schools' rooftops. And all the while, they saved money instead of spending it to achieve those environmental savings. So the other big why is health, personal and public. These are truly devastating numbers, and most of these statistics are for the Centers for Disease Control. So 40% of children and teens and 74% of adults are overweight or obese. 50% of children between the ages of 2 and 15 already have fatty streaks in their arteries, which is literally the early stages of heart disease. And 7% of children and teens and 11% of adults have high cholesterol. And nearly 4% of teens and 45% of adults have high blood pressure. And children as young as 8 years old are being prescribed blood pressure and cholesterol-lowering medications. And the need for these drugs, especially in children, is completely preventable. And it's largely preventable in adults as well. And there's more. Type 2 diabetes, formerly called adult onset, is becoming increasingly more common in elementary children. There's 210,000 children and teens in the United States that now have type 2 diabetes. And 33% of all US children will get type 2 diabetes at some point in their lives if something doesn't change dramatically. And about 35% of adults now have prediabetes. And then even worse is that 40 to 53% of African American and Latino children will get type 2 diabetes at some point in their lives. Again, if something doesn't dramatically change. And so this is just really, like devastating. Why aren't we doing more about it? It's just crazy, but it's also politics and business, right? And that's not all. If there wasn't enough, 35% of cancer deaths are caused by diet, and processed meats served on most school menus are group 1 carcinogens according to the World Health Organization, which means they are known to cause cancer in humans. That's things like bacon, pepperoni, sausage, hot dogs, deli meats, even the ones that say they're natural. That doesn't exempt them from being group 1 carcinogens. Research funded by the National Cancer Institute shows that milk and dairy products may be associated with an increased risk for breast cancer. And milk and dairy products, red and processed meat, and eggs are all linked to increased prostate cancer risk due to the hormone insulin-like growth factor, IGF-1, saturated fat, and animal-based protein. Those with the worst outcomes from COVID had these diet-related conditions: overweight, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, and certain cancers. This does not mean we can eat our way out of COVID. All the public health measures, including vaccines, masks, and distancing, are incredibly important. However, it is interesting to note that looking at this another way, while vegans got COVID at the same rate as those following other diet styles, they found that vegans were 73% less likely to have moderate to severe COVID-19. And then they compared that to pescatarians and several other diet styles. Pescatarians had 50-some% less chance, and then it went down from there. And it's not just about pandemic survival, it's also about pandemic prevention. The next pandemic will likely emerge from farming animals intensively. So this is another benefit of reducing our society's high levels of animal product consumption, stopping the next virus before it happens. It's not well known, but most of the human infectious diseases that exist today originally came from animals. So I'm going to read a quote from the book Bird Flu, A Virus of Our Own Hatching, written by Michael Greger, MD, of nutritionfacts.org, who's actually one of our board members. The term, and by the way, the term zoonosis means a disease of animal origin. Did you all know that already? Okay. The exact proportion of emerging human diseases that have arisen from other animals is unknown. In 2004, the director of the CDC noted that 11 of the last 12 emerging infectious diseases that we're aware of in the world have had human health consequences have probably arisen from animal sources, end quote. And an editorial in the British journal Lancet published the same year insisted that, quote, all human diseases to emerge in the past 20 years have had an animal source, end quote. In any case, experts agree that it's a sizable majority. The Institute of Medicine published a report on the factors implicated in the emergence of disease in the United States, and quote, the significance of zoonosis in the emergence of human infections, it included, cannot be overstated. Tuberculosis is thought to have come to us from the domestication of goats. Measles and smallpox are thought to have come from cows. Whooping cough and hepatitis E from pigs. Typhoid fever from chickens. Influenza from ducks. MERS from camels. And SARS coronavirus from bats. By the way, and this is just a little aside, but the chickens in this image were humanely raised because they are not in cages, and technically speaking, they have access to the outdoors, though most of them can never make it to the door to go outside. I'm sharing this because, just on a personal note, I want you to be skeptical of such labels like humanely raised or cage-free, which can conjure up these nice, happy images in our mind, but the reality rarely matches what you might think. Or maybe you already knew this. But I think that is important to note. So now I want to talk about how this relates to equity. Children of the global majority are more likely to rely on school meals, and thus it's more important that the meals be healthy and culturally appropriate. They're more likely to be lactose intolerant, which is actually a normal condition. Do you know this? Have you heard this? Lactose intolerance is not some medical condition. It's the norm. We're mammals. We're not supposed to be able to digest milk after we're weaned. In fact, 80% of white people have a genetic mutation that allows them to continue digesting it. But most people in the world cannot continue digesting dairy, and it causes a lot of problems. And also, children of the global majority are more likely to be disproportionately impacted by diet-related diseases, and thus healthier foods in school are even more important for them. And the water and air pollution from animal farming, specifically the animal's excrement, has been found to disproportionately affect Black, Brown, Indigenous, poor, and working class communities that are often situated nearby. They dramatically increase air pollution, making it hard to enjoy being outside with a constant stench, and it pollutes the water. So this is another way in which a societal shift toward plant-based eating would bring about greater equity by addressing this kind of environmental injustice. And these are lagoons, pig lagoons, and that's animal feces being sprayed, and that's a lagoon full of animal waste in North Carolina. So for all kids, there can be an immediate benefit, or there are immediate benefits that are especially important in the school setting: better attendance, better grades, and less classroom disruption. These are also the performance indicators that matter to schools, that schools are measured on. So plant foods build the foundation for lifelong health. Kids go to school to learn. They should be taught evidence-based nutrition, education, free of industry influence, which is not what's happening now. Children develop their tastes early in life, so it's important that schools serve a variety of healthy foods. So plant-based meals are better for the environment and for our health, and they also address equity issues, and of course, they're also kinder to animals. Now that you know why it's so important to address school meals, how do we do it? I'm going to tell you about our work in 3 school districts. First, I want to tell you about New York City schools, because they are the biggest school district in the country. There is exciting recent news, which I mentioned before, the Vegan Fridays, and there are lessons to be learned. But I'm also going to tell you about smaller school districts, which will more closely resemble the districts in this area of Western Massachusetts. Shortly after we formed our nonprofit in 2004, we reached out and got a meeting with the top-level food service administrators in New York City. Reaching out to decision makers is something you can do too. In 2008, we asked if we could bring a vegan chef into a kitchen of a partner school, and they agreed. We've been working with them ever since to promote vegan food in schools. Bringing chefs into the schools to do cooks trainings on how to work with beans, lentils, tofu, and tempeh, and other plant-based products is really important, because if the school doesn't invest in making sure that the food looks and tastes great, it is not going to succeed, and we have seen that happen. For example, if the cooks have not been trained properly, the beans may be undercooked. The food won't taste good, and the next time this food is served, the kids won't want to eat it, even though when the recipe is made according to the instructions, it's really delicious. So healthy food must look and taste great if it is to be accepted by students, and it must look and taste great from the first time it is served, because otherwise they can really blow their opportunity. While chefs may want to develop their own recipes, they don't need to. Plenty of recipe development has already been done. We have school food compliant and kid tested recipes that anyone can use on our website, healthyschoolfood.org/recipes. Another thing you can do that we have done extensively in New York City is provide nutrition education by doctors and dietitians to the food service staff, parents, teachers, and administrators to help them buy into the importance of plant-based options. It's important to find doctors and dietitians who are really knowledgeable about plant-based nutrition, and there is a growing number of them. In fact, there's a new specialty area called lifestyle medicine, and there's the American College of Lifestyle Medicine where the doctors can be a member of that. And many are happy to donate their services to help educate the school community. And we are happy to recommend some who we know are great speakers. With remote learning, you could take advantage of experts from around the country. So the picture above is a presentation by Dr. Michael Greger of nutritionfacts.org to the New York City School Food Service administrators, supervisors, and managers, over 500 of them. We've seen how much a difference this type of training can make. It is the schools that have the buy-in from the adults, where there is a culture of wellness. It's been very clear to us from our years of working with the schools that when you have the buy-in from the adults, those are the most successful in having that culture of wellness and having the acceptance of the healthy options. And you can measure that by how many plant-based options the students take and the fact that the school continues to serve them. Finally, success can also be measured in environmental terms like we talked about before with the carbon, water, and cost savings as Friends of the Earth did in Oakland, California. And so the training sessions I'm talking about, that's in person pre-pandemic, but we can do remote. And as much as many of us are sick of sitting in front of our computers, a lot of people also like that because it means they don't need to drive and park and take the extra time in their busy lives. And then we found it's important to have marketing to make the food exciting for the students. And climate change is a great approach for middle and high school students, even for the older elementary kids. Some of the ways to market healthy food includes recipe flyers, serving line signs, student poster contests, and announcements over the PA systems. But these are some posters that we got from Meatless Mondays, and they're willing to co-brand with other organizations, which is really great. There are some specific tactics that help shift menus in a more plant-based direction, and we have done this in New York City and elsewhere. For example, adding hummus to the menu every day as a healthy option, featuring plant-based foods from cultures around the world, and designating a day of the week for plant-based meals like Meatless Mondays or Vegan Fridays. As I noted before, we were very instrumental in laying the groundwork for Meatless Mondays and Vegan Fridays. So together with the Office of Food and Nutrition Services in New York City, this is how we laid the groundwork for more vegan entrees. First, we brought the vegan chef into a school kitchen to develop vegan recipes. We also brought 20 of their top administrators to a talk by Colin Campbell, PhD, author of The China Study. Anyone heard of that? It's a classic book to read, The China Study. It's only one chapter is about China, so the title is not the best title. And then we secured 20 spots for them in the E-Cornell Certificate in Plant-Based Nutrition course. We also requested that they develop a completely vegetarian menu the schools could opt into, which they did. Then, starting in 2012, we helped 4 schools adopt that menu. These were the first vegetarian public schools in the country. I already mentioned that we asked that hummus be added to the menu every day in all 1,700 schools. We encouraged them to adopt meatless Mondays. We encouraged them to eliminate processed meat. We continued the nutrition education with annual presentations by medical doctors for food service management. And we requested vegan Fridays 1 week before the pandemic shut down. Of course, once New York City's plant-based mayor, Eric Adams, took office, which was just in early January, it became even more of a priority. And so they just started it at the beginning of February. And now I'll switch over to Ithaca, New York, where I live. It serves as the perfect learning laboratory for our programs. Our Cool School Food program, and that cool has to do with keeping the planet cool, in Ithaca features plant-powered recipes from around the world and uses regional food as often as possible. But one of the biggest obstacles to getting plant-based items on school menus is the culture of school food. The food often resembles fast food. It just has less calories and sodium. But just because a school meal meets the USDA standards does not necessarily make it healthy. For example, a cheeseburger on a half-white bun and a carton of apple juice can count as a reimbursable meal, because while students are required to take a fruit or a vegetable every day, 100% fruit juice, thank you, Fruit Juice Lobby, can count as a fruit up to half the time. So as a result, many in school food service will consider that a healthy meal because it meets the requirements for reimbursement. But even when the healthy and delicious options are offered, if students can get the more processed and familiar options, it can be a challenge. There is resistance to taking away familiar foods because food service directors don't want participation to drop because that affects their bottom line. They get reimbursed for each meal that they serve. And I understand that. And by the way, I will say, food service directors are my heroes. They kept children and families fed during the pandemic. But even prior to the pandemic, they had one of the hardest jobs in the world. I cannot imagine doing that. I work with them all the time. I'm in kitchens. I see what it's like. They're constantly short-staffed. It's really hard work, and I really admire them and appreciate them. So we've made great progress in Ithaca because the food service director is very open to plant-based options. In this case, the food service director reached out to us, but you can also reach out to food service directors. So here's a snapshot of the Ithaca menu, and you can see that about 8 times a month there is a vegan main dish, and every day there is an option of hummus or peanut butter and jelly. And of course, most schools offer peanut butter and jelly or sunflower butter and jelly. So how did we get to this point? Well, the first step was developing recipes and doing taste testings. And then, fortunately, now we have a collection of recipes which were piloted in Ithaca, and now they've been shared with all the school districts in over 30 states that we communicate with every month. You can have them too. There are recipes. You can have them and use them however you want. They are there for the taking. So, as I mentioned earlier, recipe development is not something others need to necessarily focus on unless they want to, because we have this collection that meets all the USDA standards for school meals and have been kid tested and approved. We also have these recipes available in family-size versions so everyone can make them. And also, I don't know if I said this, but on the Ithaca menu, we also have the link to the recipes, the family-size recipes. That's listed on their menu every month. We've created flyers and other promotional materials that are available to go along with the recipes we've developed. These may be posted in the cafeteria or the hallways. So you can see underneath the North African red lentils, that's a serving line sign. You put it right where the food is. There are ways to promote the plant-based main dishes outside the cafeteria as well to gain student acceptance. And so one way is to make the recipes in the family and consumer science classes as shown here. These are 6th graders, and we made a whole lot of recipes together with about 100 kids each week. 3 different classrooms of 30 kids each. It was a lot of work. but so rewarding. We also offer a recipe-specific curriculum in the classroom on the day the recipe is served for lunch, and we only do this in the morning, so before lunch. As pictured here, the curriculum includes teaching about the culture the food comes from with a slideshow that shows all different aspects of that culture. Pre-pandemic, the students saw, touched, and smelled all the ingredients, tasting the food, and then participating in an inquiry-based discussion about the power of plants. And now we will be modifying this approach because unfortunately we can't have them touching and smelling the food, which is just hugely disappointing. But we'll hold it and we'll show it to them. And the rest will pretty much be the same. And we also made the recipes in after-school cooking classes. All of these educational programs encourage students to eat the climate-friendly plant-based options in the cafeteria. We know that when the students make food themselves, they're more likely to eat it, just like when schools grow food, when children grow food in gardens, they're more likely to eat it. So most of our recipes were developed by Moosewood, as I mentioned before, but some were also developed by staff in the Ithaca City School District when we asked them, including Ms. Patel's Rajma, which is an Indian kidney bean dish, and Roy's Cuban wraps. These recipes go home with students, and there's a link on the menu, which I already mentioned. A program that we ran in Ithaca, which was not directly about plant-based entrees, but nevertheless helped to change the school's culture in terms of healthy eating, was that we introduced a fresh fruit and vegetable snack program. This replaced other snacks in the classroom and was especially important for children who were not getting fruits and vegetables at home, either due to food insecurity or it just wasn't the practice of the family to eat them. The families really appreciated it, knowing their kids were getting healthy food at school, but they also really appreciated no longer having to be responsible for the classroom snack, which could be incredibly embarrassing to children whose parents forgot or to the children whose parents couldn't afford it. So they were very happy about this program. And the principals and teachers said that it changed the culture of the school and that the behavioral problems went way down. But they also said that students came home from weekends and vacations saying that they missed their fruits and vegetables, which was at once affirming and heartbreaking because it meant they were realizing how these foods were impacting them, but also it meant they weren't eating them at home. So that was the heartbreaking part. And so the program continued and expanded to 5 schools. This program also exists as a federally funded program through the Farm Bill, and some schools in each state have it, but not all the schools that want it can have it. So not even all the Title I schools, the Title I schools which have the highest percentage of low-income children, not even all of the Title I schools can have it. So it's definitely something we'd like to see more funding for because the benefits are just amazing. The third school district I want to tell you about is Alexandria Bay, New York. This is a small rural district with only about 500 students total. And the superintendent reached out to me. He called me from his car and he told me he was driving to another city to find Impossible Burgers for their school cafeteria. So how many superintendents do that, right? Anyway, he knew me because we worked together in his previous job as the principal of another school district. So he asked if I could find a distributor so the burgers could be delivered to the school, and I did that. And he's reported to me that every time they have cow burgers on the menu, they also have Impossible burgers, and that consistently 50% of the time the kids are taking the Impossible burgers. I will add that our focus is more on whole foods, but if someone asks for our help in relation to plant-based options, even if they are more processed, we're going to help them do that. So I want to make a note about institutional versus individual change. The focus of this presentation is on policy, that is, making changes within institutions and organizations. But that's not to say that individual change isn't also important and powerful, because in fact, these two kinds of change lead to and are reinforced by the other. Institutional change can lead to individual change, and in terms of both behavior and attitudes or beliefs, And individual change can then go on to catalyze institutional level change. Now, I want to talk about some challenges and opportunities. One of the big challenges is the myths around food and nutrition that so many adults believe. For example, carbs are bad or paleo is healthy. This presents an opportunity for education. Training for food service staff, teachers, and assistant teachers, administrators, and parents or caregivers helps them understand and get why changing school food is so important. Another challenge is that many school cooks don't have experience working with plant-based proteins, whether it be beans, lentils, tofu, or tempeh. I can't even tell you how many of them have told me, oh, I won't eat that. The cooks who are making it. We've done numerous trainings for school cooks, and it is always really amazing to see the skills gained, and when they taste the food they made and realize it actually tastes good. To multiply our efforts, we are in discussions with an online cooking and nutrition education school to develop programs for school cooks, school food service staff, teachers, parents, and caregivers. And we would do this in such a way that we would get grants so that the people can take the courses for free. The training should address the pain points to get the adults interested. Pain points, in case you don't know, are those tough things that have personal relevance to people. So since 7 out of 10 people are overweight or obese, and many have food addiction, high cholesterol, high blood pressure, type 2 diabetes, autoimmune illness, and other problems that are preventable and in many cases reversible with diet, helping them understand the causes and the solutions helps to get them on board for doing better for the kids. I will just add, because I just said in many cases reversible, type 2 diabetes is reversible, heart disease is reversible, cholesterol levels and high blood pressure numbers can come down to normal within like 1 to 2 weeks. So if you eat a whole food plant-based diet, which is not, vegan diets can be unhealthy, but a whole food plant-based diet is a vegan diet that's super healthy. And I'll just say the other benefit of that diet, by the way, is that you can actually eat more volume of food because it's more nutrient dense and less calorie dense. So you can actually eat a bigger volume, which I really like. All right, I digress. Family dinner nights are another opportunity to overcome the challenge of misinformation about nutrition and health. In this slide, you can see one that is pre-pandemic and one that is the remote. The remote family dinners, we get the food, we create meal kits, and then the families pick them up at the school when they pick up their children. And then they go home and they join us on a Zoom with a chef remotely, and we cook together. And each time the food is representing a different culture. And the family dinners always have a nutrition education component. So they learn how to make something, but they also learn something about nutrition, about plant-based nutrition. Another challenge is that adults have attitudes that kids won't like the food. So I picked this image of the child making a face at a plate of spinach to illustrate what adults are imagining. But the reality is that kids actually enjoy creative and delicious recipes that can be made from plants. The student on the right is in a family and consumer sciences class that we taught where we made tofu bites with orange ginger sauce. And I only wish she had put the broccoli in her bowl because we had broccoli too. So it was sweet potatoes, tofu bites, brown rice, and broccoli, which, okay, but. Some feel that the school meal budget is a challenge, and it certainly is in the sense that they don't pay the school food service workers nearly enough. Many of them make only $12 or $13 an hour, which is not even a living wage. And this is a real problem. But in terms of the amount that they spend on the food itself, which might be anywhere between $1.25 to $1.65 just for the food cost for lunches, it's very possible to offer appealing and healthy vegan food within that budget if they offer mostly scratch-cooked meals. So for example, a manufactured veggie burger may cost quite a bit more than the amount a school normally pays for the entree portion of the meal, which might be in the range of 50 to 65 cents. But the opportunity is that the scratch-made meal is healthier and more cost-effective. And there are a lot of schools that do cook, even though the perception is they just get everything frozen or in cans. But a lot of schools cook, we have found. I think that overall, the biggest challenge, though, with school meals is that they offer too many choices. So give me a choice of a vegan cheesecake or an apple, and which one am I going to take? I'm going to find it really hard to resist the cheesecake. And that's me, an adult who knows which choice is healthier, but also who knows that occasional treats are fine. But looking again at a menu from Ithaca, you can see that in addition to the 1 or 2 hot options available each day, there are about 6 additional options up here that students can choose from, like a bagel with melted cheese or a bagel with cream cheese or assorted deli sandwiches, for example. And although the students really do like the food we present to them, like when we're doing taste testings in the classroom and they don't have a choice to eat something else right at that moment in time, they often ask for seconds and thirds. So they really do like the food. But if there's something else that hyperstimulates their taste buds on the menu and they can choose it, it will win out. Not all the time, because the kids do take our entrees and that's why they continue to offer them. But a lot more kids would eat those entrees if they didn't have bagels with melted cheese every day, for example. So that's why we believe that schools should either offer less options or make sure that all the options are very healthy. But it's a big challenge, but it's also an opportunity. But again, food service directors, and I completely understand why, are unlikely to do anything that they see as threatening the participation rates, because then they lose part of their budget. Another type of challenge is the lack of resources, and so we've created a number of educational resources so you don't have to. These include Wellness Wake-Up Call, which is nutrition education in the form of easy-to-digest sound bites, and each month comes with a healthy recipe. And we encourage schools to send the messages home and encourage the parents or caregivers to review them with the children and to make the recipe together. And then the sneaky part is that the adults will learn information as well. So it's just like one little tiny message each day. It takes less than 30 seconds. Our feel-good food cards can be used in many ways, and each card includes images plus 5 interesting facts. So on the top is like the front of the card, and on the bottom is the back of that card. The images are mostly of whole plant foods, but we also have category cards for whole plant foods, vegetables, beans, fruits, grains, nuts, and seeds. And actually, there were so many great things to say about legumes and beans. We made one card for legumes and one just for beans because we couldn't narrow it down to 5 for that category. We created this booklet in partnership with Physicians Committee for Responsible Medicine, and its title is School Food Service in the Age of COVID-19 and Beyond, Why What You Serve Matters Now More Than Ever. Its audience is school food service directors and staff, and it's available online at healthyschoolfood.org/COVID booklet. And Physicians Committee mailed out 1,000 printed copies to New York State school food service directors. But everybody else can access it online. We also created these instructional posters on how to cook beans and tofu because that was a big challenge for food service staff. So now that we've learned about the what, the why, and the how, let's talk about some possible community-based learning projects. One idea is to survey schools to see how many offer plant-based options other than peanut butter and jelly, and if they don't, if they are interested in learning more. Another is to provide parents and caregivers information about plant-based eating for health, equity, and the environment as part of a survey about what they want their children to eat at school. And so, it's not really a true survey because it's sort of like educate them first and then ask the question, which is what we did with the schools that went vegetarian in New York City. We wrote an email. We helped the principals write an email, and it basically educated the parents and addressed all kinds of issues that we thought they might be worried about. Will there be enough calories? Will there be enough protein? And can my child still bring meat to school, their own lunch if they want to? So we addressed all of that. And then the last thing was, would you like to have this menu in our school? And basically everyone said yes, and nobody had any problem with it. So we've done that in 4 schools. So that was pretty nice. Another community-based learning project is to give a presentation to area school superintendents about the ability of healthier food to improve attendance grades and behavior. We did a similar presentation for the New York State School Boards Association, and we'd be happy to share this presentation if you'd like to adopt it. This picture was not the School Boards Association presentation, but this one we did in the Ithaca City School District. Yet another project would be to set up a meeting with the school food service director and ask if you can do a food tasting project with them where you supply the recipe, for example, one of ours, help them make it in the cafeteria kitchen, and then conduct a taste test. This could be a community taste test like we were doing, and this picture was in an elementary school gym, but it was all of the community was invited in. Or in the cafeteria or a classroom, or as schools are leaving school, a time of day when they are very hungry and receptive to trying free new food. Another project would be to see if you can go into a classroom and teach a class about the benefits of eating more plant foods with an inquiry-based discussion. We can share the questions that we ask for your adoption. During this time, you could gauge students' interest in plant-based entrees and relay that back to the food service director. Another community-based learning project is to hold a contest for school cooks to come up with entrees or cook our recipes. And if you choose to do this project, you could help promote the contest, take pictures, assist with the taste testing, and help to create marketing for the recipes. We regularly work with college students, and right now we are working with 4 grad students in the public health school at City University of New York to put on a speaker series. And you can learn about it and sign up to attend any of these virtual presentations, and they'll also be available online at some point after. So it's at healthyschoolfood.org/doctorisin, where you can learn more and sign up. The next one is March 10th, and it's about food addiction and weight loss. So this is a project you could do, a speaker series to educate the public with a focus on school employees and parents. For all of these projects, we at the Coalition for Healthy School Food are happy to provide guidance. Just so you know, the Coalition, for the most part, is 2 full-time people. We have a few part-time workers, but mostly 2 of us have accomplished what you've heard about today, along with the help of some volunteers. I hope that inspires you to know that the positive change that a small number of dedicated people can achieve, which reminds me of Margaret Mead's famous quote, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. And since most of you are college students and will go out into the world and make your own mark, I want to share with you 3 sentences that I said. I spoke these sentences and they dramatically changed my life, and as a result of my work, literally more than 1 million other lives. You hired the wrong person, you should have hired me. That's a long story, but that's what happened for this job I've now had for 18 years. Would you agree to make a vegetarian menu and let schools have that instead? And we want a vegan day in all schools. So really never doubt the change you can make. Be bold, ask for the change you want to see, ask questions. And a lot of times people think, oh, I can't do anything about it, but a lot of times you really can. I never could have imagined these things that my work has accomplished, but I just try to really not worry about what the answer is going to be and just ask. And I always ask for more than I expect that I'll get, because then that way you can bargain and compromise. So really ask for the change you want to see and let me know if my organization can help in any way. Thank you so much.